walk into this community room about to deliver a workshop for a group of youth in a Scarborough community. I walk in there confidently because I'm all excited, I'm happy. And before I can even really properly introduce myself, a girl that looks like she could have been my sister looks at me and says, "Wait a minute, who are you? Where are you from? What do you do? Are you a social worker?" In my mind, I was like, rude. I was about to get there, but actually, I'm a scientist, and I'm gonna show you guys some different experiments and work with the team here to get you guys engaged. Nobody looked that excited. And this girl looks back at me and says, "No, you're not." I was like, "Oh, okay, actually, I am, and why would you even say that?" Really serious. She's like, "Well, honestly, I don't know, you just don't look like you'd be a scientist." It was a little embarrassing because all the other kids were kind of like, "Yeah, sure, I don't know, like, maybe they got the wrong person." But beyond just being embarrassed, it dawned on me that that was the very reason that I was in that room. And that I understood why that girl didn't even think that I was a scientist when I said I was. So my name is Eugenia Duodu, Dr. Eugenia Duodu. And yeah, put some respect. Yeah. Thank you. And I just want to share a little bit of my story today as to how I became a scientist and what events occurred to allow me to be in that community room speaking to that girl. I grew up in a low-income community in West Toronto, raised by a single mother primarily, and I had a lot of support from my community and the people around me. And with that support, whether it be from my church, my family, my friends, it really instilled a deep passion for community work, advocacy. So I was all in it. I was on the youth councils. I was in the civic action groups. I loved community and I loved community building. It was everything for me. However, something else was also happening during all that community work. You see, it just started off with, liking some episodes of Bill Nye and Magic School Bus. And then this passion started getting a little bigger. I had a really deep, dark secret. It was kind of embarrassing. I loved science. Like, I loved it. And the reason why it was embarrassing for me, or it was weird, is because I had a really strange love-hate relationship with science. I mean, it was interesting, it was pretty cool, but there weren't people in my community lining up to go be scientists. I wasn't really seeing myself and who I wanted to be portrayed in my textbooks and television. I had really negative perceptions about science growing up. First of all, it looked hard. Second of all, it also looked like everyone that was a scientist was super robotic, had white hair, mustache, glasses. I didn't want any of those things. So in my mind, if anyone ever told me, "Oh, you like science, maybe you should pursue it," I'd be like, "I'm gonna stop you right there. This is just an interest, you need to back off." And I never wanted it to be anything more than that. Things started to change a little bit for me in the middle of high school. I had the opportunity to participate in a really specialized course in my school that had me actually working hands-on and having the opportunity to experiment with different things. I got exposed to research, real research. And in my mind, I was like, "Ooh, this is super interesting. I might need to keep doing this." I started getting really good grades, and I was like, "Oh, crap, okay. This might actually be a thing." And for me, the tipping point, I participated in this program that was actually geared to youth from communities like mine, to youth who looked like me, and also to Indigenous youth. And this program really gave me the opportunity to not only participate and meet different researchers and healthcare practitioners, but it also gave me the confidence to be like, "Yeah, you know what? I'm just gonna do this after high school. We'll see what happens." So I did it. I decided to pursue science after high school. I enrolled in a university program. I was doing it. And while I was in university, I was pretty excited. I mean, I was getting some good grades, and when I would, I'd be like, hey, look at me, I'm so smart. It was great. However, I suffered from crippling imposter syndrome. No matter what was happening and no matter what was going on, from the ups to the failures, I still felt like, I don't know if you really belong here. I mean, there were times when I would look at some of the assignments or things that I had to do, and not knowing what the end point would be started becoming really, really disheartening. Not only that, I still wasn't really seeing people that looked like me or represented my lived experience. So it was still hard for me to feel like, yeah, you deserve to be here. After a while, though, with some support and encouragement from my family, and primarily support and encouragement from amazing profs who gave me amazing research opportunities, I started to realize, you know what? I do deserve to be here. I think for me, the main change in my life and one of the most pivotal moments was a conversation that I had with one of my best friends, Sarah De Silva. We're sitting, chilling in the cafeteria, talking, and she looks at me and asks me a very important question. She said, oh, Eugenia, would you ever do your PhD? To be honest, I was like, girl, hell no. I am not trying to be in school longer than I already have. I'm not trying to go through all of the things that you have to go through in order to obtain it. I'm just trying to live my life. So this was cute, gonna get my undergrad, but I think I'm done after this. There's something that Sarah looked back at me and said that will always stick with me. She's like, well, I think you can do it, so you should. And to be honest, that, with a lot of other events, was one of the really big moments that I decided, you know what? I am gonna continue and do my PhD. While doing my PhD, I was able to meet incredible people. I had the opportunity to work in a lab that was actually at the forefront of research. We were dealing with cancer therapeutics, developing disease diagnostics, and this was with a group of people that I can honestly say are hilarious, amazing, dope. Didn't fit into any of the stereotypes that I had placed or labels that I had placed on them prior. And I can't help but think that I wouldn't have met them if I didn't take this step. What was awesome is that together, all of us were kind of being able to figure out the solutions to very critical problems and actually contribute to meaningful research in the field. It was an amazing experience. But anyone who worked with me in lab would tell you that I always had one foot in lab, one foot back in the community. I told you, community was at the core of who I was and what I wanted to do. So in that, my two passions, there was always kind of this tension between them. Near the end of my PhD, I started getting super confused because I was like, okay, what am I gonna do after? Because I'm passionate about so many things, and I'm a scientist, so I guess I gotta do sciencey stuff for the rest of my life. Again, I was putting scientists in a box. I was relegating what I was doing in science to only being able to do one thing. And I couldn't really see my passion for community and science intersecting. But as I began to reflect on what had actually brought me to this point to be able to work in this lab and to be part of this groundbreaking research, I realized that it was those tipping point opportunities that took me from just a mere interest to actually a tangible reality in my life and for my future. So with that, I started to realize that, you know what? There's a way that you can bring community and science together. And that could actually be a combination of my passions. Today, as you know, I have the privilege and honor of being able to run an organization that works with youth from communities similar to mine to get them engaged and motivated in science, technology, engineering, and math, and encourage them to overcome some of the crippling imposter syndrome that comes with being underrepresented in a field. For me, When I think of the unlikely scientist, if I could ever go back, if I could speak to unlikely scientists, if there are some unlikely scientists in this room, I would give them a couple of these pro tips. Pro tip number 1, you ready? Seize and seek opportunity. For me, there were a lot of opportunities that were afforded to me. It was up to me to actually go through them and give it a try. I can tell you right now, not all of those opportunities involved a PhD in chemistry or learning about chemistry. But everything I didn't like, I actually was able to make an informed decision as to why I didn't like it because I tried it and I realized I didn't. And sometimes that's better than not knowing what you don't know. My second pro tip. Understand that there are barriers, but you can overcome them. I don't think a lot of people appreciate that for some people in this room, there are more barriers than others to engaging in science. These barriers could be in race, socioeconomic status, gender, whatever the like. And whatever spectrum of privilege you fall on, you might need to be an advocate or an ally for underrepresented groups. You might be part of an underrepresented group, and you need to actually realize that you deserve to be in the spaces that you inhabit and overcome the barriers that are presented in front of you. My third pro tip, commit to the cause. Let me tell you something. Doing a PhD in chemistry is hard, with a hard R. It is very hard. And there was nothing easy about it. For every success, it was met with failure as well, whether it be thinking that I was a failure or a failure with one of my experiments. I had to learn how to finesse failure. I had to learn how to cope with failure. And I had to learn how to overcome it and come out like, well, I'm still gonna get my PhD though, so. And then sometimes you need to let yourself know that in the midst of you struggling and studying and doing what you have to do, there is still a cause and a goal that you are going towards. There will be failure, there will be success. Commit to it until you're done. And my last tip for you, and probably the most important, is be yourself. I told you guys that I didn't feel like I belonged in science because none of the narratives around who a scientist could be fit in with who I was. When I became a scientist and when I got into science, I realized that science needed me. Science needed my swag. Science needed my passion. Science needed my ratchet clapping. Science needed everything that I am. And you know what? At the end of the day, what you bring to the table will change the field that you're in. And no one can bring it except for you. So at the end of the day, forget those false perceptions of what a scientist needs to be. The scientist needs to be you. Whoever you are, that's the new scientist that's in the field. You know what I'm saying? Next. At the end of the day, if I could look back and see that little girl in that community room in Scarborough, I didn't respond well to her because I didn't have time to, and I was also kind of embarrassed. But if I could look back to her and talk to her, I'd say, you know what? This is my story. This is what I struggled with. I understand why you don't believe me, but I'm here to tell you that if you want to do this, if this is something that interests you, don't let anyone hold you back, and do it. And you can do it. You, a girl from a low-income community, you, a black girl with your plats, can actually migrate and navigate through the system with support and become a scientist if that is something that you wanted to do. I'll leave you with one of my favorite quotes by a lady by the name of Erica Hairston, who's a black woman in tech. She says that numerous societal problems are waiting to be solved. And I realize more and more that we need untapped and underestimated minds to be part of the solutions. Thank you.